Her grandson said, "I love you." She smiled, but forgot who he was minutes later. That wasn't the scary part. The scary part was what happened before, the first warning sign no one noticed. If you're over 60, this is the one memory change you cannot afford to ignore. It started in the kitchen. Not with a collapse or a panic, but a flicker. A brief, ordinary moment that no one else noticed. Helen was peeling carrots at the sink. Her grandson, 7 years old, missing a front tooth, hugged her from behind. "I love you, Grandma," he said. She smiled, squeezed his hand, and kissed his cheek. "I love you too, sweetheart." But she didn't say his name. Not because she forgot it completely, but because she wasn't sure. For a few seconds, the slot in her brain where his name should live had gone blank. And she didn't want anyone to know. 10 minutes later, she turned to her daughter and said, half laughing, "Whose little boy is this again?" The room went quiet. Her daughter stared. The boy looked confused. Helen brushed it off with a laugh. "Just teasing," she said. But her heart was pounding. She knew she wasn't. That's how it begins for many. Not with forgetting, but with covering. A missed word here. A wrong date there. Then the whisper of fear. Was that normal? Or something worse? The most dangerous memory decline rarely starts with drama. It starts with a tiny, private decision to hide what you're noticing. At first, Helen could still drive, pay bills, hold a conversation. She played Scrabble. She read novels. But she also repeated stories without realizing. She used the wrong words, elbow, when she meant ankle. She lost track of what she was doing mid-task. And every time, she had an excuse. "I didn't sleep well. I've just got too much on my mind." That's what makes early signs so dangerous. Because when you still seem sharp, no one pushes you. No one checks. You pass the polite small talk, you remember birthdays, you don't look confused. But internally, something has shifted. And it's easier to rationalize than investigate. Many seniors don't forget in obvious ways. They compensate. They smile and nod when they're not sure what was said. They let someone else answer the phone, or refill the prescriptions, or book the trip. At first, it's subtle. But over time, the brain gets tired. And that mental effort, the constant editing, covering, second-guessing, starts to take a toll. By the time someone else notices, damage may already be done. And here's the terrifying part. Even when something is wrong, it can still be caught early. Some causes are reversible. Some can be slowed. But only if you stop pretending. So how do you tell the difference between normal aging and something more serious? The answer starts with what your doctor should rule out first, and it's not what most people expect. Because if Helen had ignored that flicker in the kitchen, if she had chalked it up to just getting older, she might have missed something that wasn't age at all. Something far more dangerous. The brain doesn't fail overnight. It fades, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. But here's what most people don't realize. The brain doesn't just forget. It misfires. It stalls. It rewires. And when that starts happening, it's not always because of age. Sometimes, it's because something is attacking it. When Helen's daughter finally got her to the doctor, she expected a quick conversation. V12 test, maybe. Some reassurance. But her doctor didn't smile it off. He leaned forward and said, "We need to rule out the big things first." Because the kind of moment Helen had, that flash of confusion over her grandson's face, is a red flag. It could be the beginning of Alzheimer's. Or something that looks like it, but isn't. That's where we start. Not to scare you, but because no one else will say it plainly, you do not wait to test for Alzheimer's. You test to catch it early, while you still have a say. The early signs aren't always forgetfulness. In fact, that often comes later. More subtle signals can show up first. You get lost on a familiar road. You can't follow a recipe you've made for years. You stop recognizing faces, or mix up who someone is. You smell something burning when nothing is there. These may seem random. They're not. They point to specific brain regions under stress. And while Alzheimer's is the most feared cause, there are others your doctor must consider. 1. Mini-strokes, TIAs. These, silent strokes, don't always cause slurred speech or collapse. They can cause temporary confusion, vision changes, or memory gaps. Often, people brush them off, thinking they just zoned out. But they're a warning sign. A bigger stroke could be next. Brain tumors, but subtle ones near the frontal or temporal lobes can distort memory, emotions, or behavior, long before they cause headaches or seizures. The only way to rule them out is imaging, a CT or MRI. 3. Normal pressure hydrocephalus, NPH. A buildup of fluid in the brain that affects walking, thinking, and bladder control. It mimics dementia but can be treated, if caught early. Most doctors miss it unless you insist on looking deeper. This is why the first step is not a supplement or a crossword puzzle. It's a test. A simple one called the MoCA, Montreal Cognitive Assessment. It checks for early signs of decline across attention, memory, language, and spatial awareness. It's more sensitive than the old, draw a clock, test, and it takes just 10 to 15 minutes. You can ask your doctor for it directly. You should ask for it, especially if you've had even one moment that made you pause. Because here's the truth, if it's something serious, waiting only gives it time to spread. But if it's not, you've ruled out the worst and can move forward with clarity. Next, we look where almost no one thinks to, your medicine cabinet. Because the pills that were meant to help you might be making things worse. Helen had ruled out the worst. No tumors, no stroke, no Alzheimer's, at least not yet. Her MoCA score was just below normal, but not alarming. The doctor called it mild cognitive impairment and said, let's just keep an eye on it. But that wasn't good enough for her daughter. An eye on what, exactly? She asked. And that's when another question finally came up. What medications are you taking? It's a question most doctors don't ask early enough. And yet for seniors, it's often the most important one. Helen had been on the same meds for years. Nothing new. An over-the-counter allergy pill she took every night to help her sleep. Something for bladder urgency. Something for occasional anxiety. All seemed harmless. But together, they were doing something dangerous, blocking a critical brain chemical called acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter deeply tied to learning and memory. Drugs that do this are called anticholinergics. You may not have heard the term, but odds are you've taken one. Diphenhydramine, Benadryl, common in PM sleep aids. Oxybutynin, used for overactive bladder. Tricyclic antidepressants, older meds still prescribed for nerve pain or sleep. Some motion sickness patches, muscle relaxers, even heart medications. The problem isn't just one of these drugs. It's when they pile up, silently, over years. And by the time memory issues begin, no one connects the dots. Especially when the prescription is old. Especially when you were told it was safe. But here's what the research shows. Long-term use of anticholinergic drugs is associated with increased risk of dementia. Even when you stop taking them, the damage doesn't always reverse. Helen's nighttime allergy pill? It was actually sedating her brain in ways it couldn't fully recover from by morning. Her bladder medication? It was blocking the same receptors that Alzheimer's medications are designed to stimulate. In other words, one drug was quietly undoing what another might try to preserve. And none of her doctors had ever warned her. Because most don't. You may have been prescribed something years ago that helped. But it's not your doctor's job to track what it's doing to your brain now. That's your job. And if you don't know what to look for, no one else will. So here's your action step. Request a medication review with your doctor or a pharmacist. Ask specifically, are any of these anticholinergic? Could any affect memory? Bring the whole list, prescriptions, over-the-counter pills, nighttime sleep aids. Everything. Even the ones you think don't count. And remember, do not stop any medication suddenly. But do start the conversation. Because Helen's mild memory issues weren't the start of a disease. They were the slow, predictable effect of drugs she trusted. And if she'd waited any longer, her memory might not have come back at all. Next, we talk about what fuels the brain every day, and what happens when it's fed the wrong thing. George had always prided himself on being sharp. Retired CPA. Every receipt in order. He still did the taxes for his kids. But lately things weren't adding up. He'd walk into a room and forget why. lose track of steps in a task he'd done 100 times. But it wasn't constant, it came and went. Some mornings he felt fine. Others, he'd stare at a crossword clue for 20 minutes like the letters were floating. He wasn't scared enough to call it memory loss. He just figured he was foggy. Until the morning he left the stove on. Until the day he got off at the wrong highway exit, twice. That's when his wife Dolores noticed a pattern. His worst moments happen mid-morning, right after breakfast. Most people think of blood sugar in terms of diabetes. But your brain runs almost entirely on glucose. When that fuel supply spikes, crashes, or gets mismanaged, your thinking suffers first. And the brain doesn't just slow down, it panics. It's why George would eat toast and fruit at 7:30 and feel like a zombie by 10. What was happening was a mild version of something far more dangerous, type 3 diabetes. That's the name some researchers use for the connection between insulin resistance and cognitive decline, especially Alzheimer's. Here's how it works. When you eat a carb-heavy breakfast, like cereal, toast, fruit juice, or even oatmeal, your blood sugar rises fast. Your body releases insulin to bring it down. But as you age, your cells can become resistant to insulin's signal. So your body releases even more insulin, trying to fix it. That high insulin state causes inflammation in the brain. It blocks communication between neurons. And over time, it leads to a shrinking hippocampus, the memory center. You don't have to be diabetic. You don't even need to be pre-diabetic. If you're eating like most Americans, you're on the roller coaster already. And seniors are especially vulnerable. Because many were told for decades that fat was bad and cereal was healthy. That eggs raised cholesterol. That toast and fruit were the smart breakfast. But that low-fat, high-carb advice was a trap. And the brain is paying for it now. So what's the fix? Start your day with protein and fat. Eggs with avocado. Greek yogurt with walnuts. Cottage cheese and berries. Even a protein shake. No sugar, just fuel. The goal isn't to cut carbs completely. It's to avoid the spike crash pattern that starves the brain. When you stabilize blood sugar, you stabilize your thoughts. George switched to a higher fat, lower carb breakfast for just 1 week. His fog didn't disappear, but the crashes stopped. His focus returned by mid-morning. And for the first time in months, he finished a puzzle in one sitting. If your memory feels worse after eating, or if your sharpest hours are unpredictable, don't assume it's age. It might be your metabolism trying to warn you. But food isn't the only factor. Because sometimes what looks like dementia is just something your blood can't carry anymore. Dolores had started repeating herself. Not once or twice, daily. Don't forget to take the chicken out, she'd tell her husband. Then again, 10 minutes later. She forgot dentist appointments. Misplaced the checkbook. Told the same story about the grandkids 3 times at dinner. She joked about it, at first. Senior moment. Guess I'm losing it. But when she called her neighbor by the wrong name, a woman she'd known for 20 years, her smile faltered. Something wasn't right. Her doctor mentioned dementia. Ordered a brain scan. But the first real answer came from a blood test. Not her brain. Her B12 levels. What Dolores had was functional B12 deficiency, a condition that causes mental fog, forgetfulness, word loss, even mood swings and hallucinations. It mimics Alzheimer's almost exactly. And yet, it's one of the easiest causes to miss and to treat. Here's why it matters. As we age, our stomach acid naturally declines. That makes it harder to absorb B12 from food, especially from meat, eggs, and dairy. Add acid-blocking medications, like omeprazole or ranitidine, and absorption drops even further. And the scary part? Your B12 blood level can look normal even when your brain is starving. Doctors often use outdated ranges. A level of 300 might be fine on paper, but symptoms can start under 500. That's why seniors in Japan are treated at higher levels and have lower dementia rates. But B12 isn't the only deficiency that looks like brain decline. Vitamin D, low levels are linked to poor mood, focus issues, and cognitive slowness. Deficiency is common in seniors who avoid sun exposure or live in northern climates. Magnesium, crucial for nerve signaling and sleep quality. Deficiency can cause anxiety, restlessness, and poor memory. Diuretics and acid blockers deplete it quickly. Omega-3s, these fats make up brain cell membranes. Low intake, especially from fish or flax, has been tied to faster brain aging and more inflammation. Dolores had been eating what she thought was a healthy diet, low-fat everything, lots of bread, not much meat. It wasn't indulgence, it was fear. For decades, she'd heard cholesterol was the enemy. So she cut eggs, skipped butter, and lived on toast, tea, and low-fat yogurt. She didn't know that she was starving her brain. It's not her fault. It's what an entire generation was told. But here's the fix. Ask for a full nutrient panel, not just B12, but vitamin D, folate, homocysteine, and omega-3 levels. If something's low, treat that, not just the symptom. And remember, you don't need exotic supplements. Sometimes, it's as simple as eating real food again. Dolores started adding back eggs, fatty fish, a B12 lozenge under the tongue. Within weeks, the fog began to lift. She still repeated herself sometimes, but she recognized it, corrected it. And she didn't call the neighbor the wrong name again. Not all memory loss is permanent. Sometimes it's just malnourished. But how do you know what's normal and what's not? In our final segment, we break that down and show you what to do next. Here's the truth no one tells you. Memory loss doesn't feel like forgetting. It feels like doubt. You go into the kitchen and can't remember why. You misplace your keys, but you're not sure if you had them in your hand or just thought about them. You reach for a word you know is there, and come up empty. Then you wonder, is this what it starts like? It might be, or it might not. Not every slip is a warning. But if you found yourself working harder to stay sharp, compensating, avoiding tasks, laughing things off, then it's time to stop guessing and start tracking. Here's what to look for. Normal aging looks like this. You forget names but remember them later. You lose things but retrace your steps. You need reminders, but you can follow instructions. You have off days but bounce back. Early cognitive decline looks like this. You forget conversations completely. You struggle to follow a plot or recipe. You repeat questions without realizing it. You feel lost in familiar places, or can't find the words at all. It's not about panic. It's about pattern. If something's changing, track it. Start a notebook. Or use a simple calendar. Write down moments that feel off. What happened, when, how long it lasted. Did you eat beforehand? Take a pill? Sleep poorly the night before? Over time, you'll see trends. And those patterns can help a doctor rule things out, or catch something early. But don't stop there. If you've had even one moment that scared you, a blank face, a forgotten child, a story you didn't remember telling, take one of these steps this week. Ask your doctor for a MOCA test, especially if they haven't offered one. Request blood work for B12, D, folate, and thyroid. Audit your medications for anticholinergics and memory-related side effects. Change your breakfast, cut the sugar, add fat and protein. Add back real foods, eggs, salmon, leafy greens, liver, full-fat dairy. This isn't about a cure. It's about a chance. Because if you wait for someone else to tell you it's serious, it might already be too late. Helen's story didn't end with forgetting her grandson's name. It started there. And because her daughter saw it and asked the right questions, they caught it early enough to make a difference. You're not powerless. But you do have to look closely before the signs get too easy to ignore. If something feels off, trust yourself. Not your fear. Not your pride. Not the voice that says, it's probably nothing. You know your mind better than anyone. Don't wait to lose it to fight for it. Fight now. Please share your thoughts in the comments if you've experienced something like this. Your story could help someone else realize they're not alone. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified when our next video goes live.